Now we're talking about the differences between the groups, but what do they all value in a way? I mean, you're safe in an interview, pretty much doing certain things no matter what generation is valued.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, regardless of the generation you're interviewing with, a couple of things always are valued, I would say, by all groups. One is your ability to speak specifically about your contributions. What contributions have you made, and how have they made a difference? The second thing is really looking at how you work in a team, especially a team that's composed of people who may be different in terms of age, in terms of culture, in terms of anything really. The third thing that I would really look at is, again, how you communicate effectively, how you solve problems. And how you go, what's your process for solving problems. I think that's something that's valued. The other thing is listening. In an interview, it's not just about you and everything you can bring, but it's also paying attention to the interviewer, finding out what's really important to them, and asking good questions. So I think good interviewers would value all of those of an applicant.
Excellent, excellent. I know this is slightly different here, but there are a lot of cultural differences as well, and oftentimes either the candidate or the person interviewing is foreign, a person from another country. English is not their first language. Can you just talk a little bit about whether the values are enough in common to interview just in kind of a generic way, or should you make any kind of observations or listening to figure out how to respond cross-culturally in an interview as well?
There's a couple of things that I suggest. First of all, we have the ability now to do a lot of research on people, and if you're going to be interviewing with people, it's helpful to know a little bit about their background and their values. A lot of times people use Google or they use other search tools to really find, and that can be a real advantage. The cultural thing is a very interesting thing because in Silicon Valley, for example, last year I went to a seminar and it was said that 45% of all engineers in Silicon Valley were born in another country.
Wow.
These are people who are going to be interviewing. And so I think what happens is you have so many different cultures who are working in today's workplace that it's very hard to generalize. The thing that I look at is take some cues off of what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. So for example, if you have somebody who's more low-key, in some cultures, for example, it's not considered appropriate to really, quote, brag about your accomplishments. So if you know enough about those particular cultures, the things you would emphasize is your role in a team and how together you work more. So I might emphasize more around team. Some cultures may be more confrontational. And don't want to stereotype any one culture, but sometimes you'll find somebody who's very how'd you do this and what'd you do there, and very fast-paced and all that. And again, I think if you get closer to matching their style, the interview may go a little bit better.
So that fits with what you're saying about listening. It's like using all your senses before you try to tell a joke or do too much. Just really pay attention to what's going on in that room.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How about the idea of people working in teams? You brought up having to be effective and being able to work in teams. Different generations working together in teams. Is there any tips you can give people? I mean, I know it's similar to the interview, but you're in a team, a cross-functional team, and there's all these different age groups, and what's going to be effective to work together and not?
There's a couple of things. One is to recognize that everybody in your generation, well, you may be of one generation, but other generations are coming in with some different values. And I think it's important, number one, not to stereotype any one generation. The second thing is to really learn about them as an individual, and not just through email, but have conversations. What's important to you in the kind of work that you do?
Ask them.
And I find that, for example, if I'm working with a veteran, it's really helpful to ask them to talk about their history or how they saw the company grow or how have things changed and get their perception for the long-term view.
Let somebody mentor you in some
Yes,
ways, right?
exactly. And I think everybody of every generation in the workplace has something really important to share. So for example, the Gen X and the Gen Y, they're the ones who are probably the most technically adept. Look at using their resourcefulness and their tools and have them help you doing, on something that you may not be quite as comfortable with. If the younger generations are dealing with tough interpersonal problems, be a mentor, be somebody who's available to help them. And I think when people start valuing what each brings to the table and accesses that and values that and asks for help in that, I think that can really help the teamwork.
Okay. If somebody wants to learn a little more about this, what is there books or reading material or websites or anything that you'd recommend?
Yeah, one book that I really like is called Working with I think it's called Working with Generations, and there are a number of things. I also find that there's a lot of things coming out in the media, the written media, and one article that I read that I really liked was in Fortune of last year, and it's called Manage Us, Please. And it's all about Gen Y, and it's fascinating. It gave me some really good insights. And
on my website, excuse me for interrupting you, but on my website I add the contact information for everybody that's been on the show, so our viewers can either contact you or me, and we can give them the full title.
Sure.
One that I would recommend is called Communicating with Customers Around the World, and I'd be happy to tell people about that, but it goes area by area saying what the customs are and what you do in a business meeting and so forth, so it's got the cross-cultural piece, and then you have that article has the generational piece.
Yeah.
So you know what? We're out of time. We haven't covered everything. I had a few more things to ask you about. Do you see that the number of interviews are going to continue to be as many as we have now?
I do, because what I see is people and companies are getting very selective about who they bring in, and so what we're seeing is many more people getting involved. So instead of, for example, HR and the hiring manager making the hiring decisions, you may come in, interview with HR, the hiring manager's manager, who may be a veteran or...
So they better be ready to do all these things.
Yep.
We're out of time. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching You're Hired. If you have any questions about this show or anything else, feel free to email me at steve@bayareacareercoach.com. And I am going to put the websites of Pat and everybody else we've had on my show on the website, so it's okay if they ask you a question. Right?
Absolutely.
All right. And do check out the website, www.bayareacareercoach.com. Again, that's www.bayareacareercoach.com. I thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time on You're Hired. And thank you for being on You're Hired.
Thank you.
It really does seem like if they're going to go through that many rounds of interviews, they are going to need